Thank you, Senator Stone. Senator Hancock.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll also be supporting it today, but I did just have some questions in a little more detail in looking at this and previously when I read a draft of the MOU. Could you say a little bit more about the recruitment and retention issues that CDCR is facing, and especially about the incentive pay for what will now be about 25% of our state prisons, 8 out of 33, because we're expanding incentive pay to Pelican Bay, High Desert, and some of our other prisons.
Good. Thank you for that question. I can probably just speak more generally about some of those recruitment and retention issues. So, because we have a lot of our prisons are located in pretty rural areas, it's obviously going to be, it's not surprising that sometimes we have trouble hiring in sort of more remote places. So it's been a policy for many years that we've offered an incentive to try to to increase the salary, have a pay differential incentive to try to entice employees to want to locate to areas like Pelican Bay, Susanville, places like that. And so the contract includes some additional funding and increased incentives for employees to work in those hard to hire places.
Yeah, thank you. I would just note, as a historical context, when we had our huge prison boom in the 1990s, we did place prisons in these very rural areas where jobs were scarce. And now we have retention and recruitment issues. We also have real treatment of inmate issues in places like High Desert, as Senator Nielsen probably knows because it's in his district. And I think that it really points out the attention that we need to pay in other parts of the budget to mental health training for officers, officer access to the kind of support systems that they need in terms of all kinds of training for these tough jobs, as Senator Stone said, and realizing also the value of prisons like San Quentin, which, because they're in highly populated areas, do have a very strong volunteer base also, which leads to more rehabilitation and therefore safer communities when people return. But I understand where we're going with this, and I'm supportive of it. But along those same lines, I noticed that we do allow the cash out of up to 2 weeks, 80 hours of leave every year. What is the average? What is the average leave? Is it just 2 weeks? Is it a month for a correctional officer?
Of how much they can accrue a year?
No, well, yeah, and how it's spent.
I don't.
I'm concerned about that because.
So, I mean, we know that. So this has been sort of a longstanding issue in state government, where we've, our employees can accrue quite a significant amount of leave balances that they're entitled to cash out upon retirement. And when you cash it out at your rate of pay when you're at the end of your career, it's going to be significantly higher than possibly when you earned it a decade or two earlier. So as part of the strategy, we've been encouraging with the last contract cycle with our employee groups is to encourage departments to offer a leave buyback program up to a couple weeks of 40 to 80 hours generally. To our employees, that those costs are absorbed within the department if the department has the funds available to offer that ability for employees to basically sell back a week or two of pay or of leave they've accrued, and it helps reduce those liabilities, which I don't have off the top of my head, but I know that we've done a good job of actually trying to keep them from continuing to skyrocket through these leave buyback programs.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, I'm just concerned because I would like and would hope our correctional officers would take 2 weeks off and do what everybody needs to do every once in a while, sit back and chill, right? And do you have any statistics on how many would actually work the whole 52 weeks a year and then cash out 80 hours?
I will have to
I don't
look
think it's
that up.
healthy.
And yeah, happy to get that information back to you, though.
I'd be very interested, because again, it's part of how we construct a system that's really going to work well to create safer communities by reducing recidivism.
Senator, I might have some information that might help you. The current leave balance is about $430 million for all of Unit 6, and that would be their vacation and annual leave. So it doesn't include all the other types of leave that they might have accrued. And one of the reasons why Unit 6 in particular would have high leave balances is because they were subject to the most furlough days of all the bargaining units, and so they weren't able to take all the days that they receive in a typical year plus the 94 days they received in furlough.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful. And then finally, does this contract deal with standardized staffing at all? And one of the things that I've never been able to figure out is whether standardized staffing was part of an MOU at one time, whether it was legislative action, part of a trailer bill, or...
I'll try to answer your question. Maybe
Okay.
partially, though. So we know that standardized staffing came into play during realignment when lower level inmates were sent to county jails as opposed to staying in prison. So the initial pieces of standardized staffing started around summer of 2012, but it was mostly dealt with the local negotiations, continued until all the pieces were implemented in 2013. So I don't think there's anything new in this contract that deals with.
Okay, so where was it established? In what regulation, code, or level of government?
If I can bring up a lifeline here.
Yes. Granted.
Candace Murch, CalHR, Labor Relations. So standardized staffing was negotiated in side letters, and per 2701 of the BU6 contract, those side letters are attached. So it's the standardized staffing agreement still lives on today.
So they're not in trailer bill, not in statute, not in regulation, in side letters.
They're tied to the MOU.
yeah, to
personnel
the
that
MOU.
goes through the LBC process.
Okay, and so when we adopt the MOU, do we adopt the side letters too?
Yes.
Okay, but we haven't,
You've already adopted the side letters.
yeah, I know we have those side letters. I just wondered, are there any side letters to this one? Because there are big budget implications in some side letters.
Yes, so the side letters are automatically through 2701 rolled into the future agreements.
Okay. But there are no side letters, new side letters in this contract?
Well,
There are new side letters, I believe.
there would be. I mean, there's side letters that are negotiated regularly throughout the year that are sort of included as attachments in the main MOU.
I believe the dollar amount to the CCPOA Benefit Trust Fund is a side letter for this
Okay.
agreement.
Could you get me the side letters relating to standardized staffing? And I'm bringing this up simply because if we have legislative oversight of the budget, and it turns out that there's a major budget implication in a side letter, but we don't even know it exists, and so we happily adopt an MOU, but we don't really know what we're buying. You know, I'm not necessarily opposed at all to standardized staffing. It is, however, the reason that we've been put in a position where unless we close a prison or a yard, we cannot reduce staff, therefore we get no savings. So when some of my colleagues say population going down, budget going up, why? The answer is, in a great part, because of standardized staffing, and also that we have to improve conditions for both our staff and our inmates, and we have to get more education back so that we can rehabilitate people. But I do think side letters are important, and I would be interested in seeing the ones relating to standardized staffing, because they are a major, major piece of the budget that we need to enact. Thank you. And having said that, I will be supporting the bill. Will
Moment,
be
please.
prepared to
Thank you, Senator Hancock. Mr. Stern?
Yes.
I agree completely with Senator Hancock. Standardized staffing, I think, is probably somewhat exceptional in its budgetary impact that you would put into a side letter, but nonetheless, we can't know what we're voting on entirely if we don't have side letters. So a standard procedure, I would request that all side letters be presented to this committee before we take a vote on any MOUs in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, whenever a side letter is approved as part of the regular negotiation process, we have a JLBC notification requirement. They're all posted, but we can definitely make sure that we're being as transparent as possible, making sure that the committee knows what is included in the MOU, what sort of attachments, appendices, things like that. So we can definitely get that information to you as soon as possible.
Good, thank you. So we have Senator Anderson, then Senator Roth, then Senator Nielsen, and Senator Glazer.
Actually, all my concerns were addressed by Senator Hancock, so thank you.
Thank you, Senator Anderson. Senator Roth.
Chair, I just want to make sure, will we have the side letters, or at least a summary of all of them? Not only the newly negotiated ones, but the ones that are rolled in and become part of this new MOU. Will we have that before we vote on the floor?
Is that doable?
Right, well, we can make sure you have that, definitely. If you don't, if it hasn't been provided to you already, I mean, the entire MOU it's in this binder. I mean, it's significantly big. It's provided, it's on the website.
How about a summary of the side letters?
Right, well, we can, we'll make sure that we.
I don't need the binder, but I think we ought to have at least a short summary of each of the side letters that you indicate are part of this MOU, either because of history or because they were newly negotiated as part of this one.
We'll get that compiled ASAP.
And just to clarify for you, Senator Roth, the accumulation of side letters over the past years, they have gone through the JLBC. So our staff on both sides, in both houses, reviews those as they come up. But my concern was if there were specifically side letters to this MOU that were negotiated simultaneous to it, we'd appreciate seeing those.
Absolutely.
Senator Nielsen and then Senator Glazer.
Do you have an accounting of the vacant personnel, PYs, that you can provide? The number of vacant PYs, do you keep track of the PYs?
We do, absolutely. I don't have that on me.
Have those contributed to the excessive overtime that you've accrued over years?
It definitely can. There's definitely there can be a relationship between that. If in hard to fill facilities that the staff has to, 24-hour facilities, we have to have folks working.
And some of the facilities are very difficult to recruit for. I more than understand because I've represented a lot of them. But that said, what kind of internal controls, incentives has the department employed to try to ensure the maximum filling of the authorized PYs?
I think it's an ongoing management effort to ensure that we're balancing the needs to staff the facilities around the clock, 24/7. There's always it's just with a lot of the movement that's been happening with the prison population over the last years. It's definitely something that is constantly being reevaluated and retooled to make sure that we're staffing as adequately as we can in those facilities.
Can you assure us that that is a high priority of CDCR?
Oh, I think that it's definitely it's a top management priority to ensure that we have adequate staffing in the facilities.
And these letters are important. I want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues here so that the legislature has a very, very clear picture of what's going on. And lastly, I will say that I probably better than anyone in the legislature know the lives of the correctional officers, and they are often maligned, and I think largely unjustly so. I know the lives they lead. And a lot of people enjoy those careers and spending many years in those careers. A goodly number of them are college educated, but it is a very difficult life. You're surrounded daily with only the worst of circumstances, and now, more than ever before, the worst of individuals to be dealing with. Extraordinarily stressful, and not just for the officers and the supervisors and even the free staff, but for their families as well. And I always keep that in mind when I think about people who work within the prisons. I've been in there a lot. Most Californians have no idea whatsoever what it's like.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. I think it was with those very concerns in mind that Senator Hancock was suggesting that if there's a way to encourage officers to take their earned vacation time and not accumulate it for their own mental health benefits. Senator Glazer, and then Senator Wilk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance, you've indicated you're cycling through the various units of state government, trying to create some consistency in pay and benefits. Is that right?
Correct.
Right. And how many other units are there still to come? And are those expected this year?
Oh, right. So we're in active negotiations with pretty much everyone else. That's we have 21 bargaining units. We reached deals in this past year with 3 of them. So 18 left.
Still to come.
Just less CCP. So, right. I mean, it's more than, it's the majority of state employees are still left going through the bargaining negotiation process currently.
Within state government, what are the units that you're not in charge of negotiating?
So CalHR negotiates with all executive branch employee groups. So in the larger state employee workforce, it would predominantly be legislative employees, judicial branch employees, and the Cal State University system, which it's subject to its own collective bargaining law that the CSU system negotiates with.
And it's not clear here, and I wonder if where those other units are consistent or not consistent with what the negotiations that you've been bringing forward to us now.
So because we're starting with the employee groups that we have jurisdiction over, and that's where our focus is in this year at least.
Right. So, for example, when I see how you're handling healthcare issues, healthcare benefits and costs and sharing, I see there's some inconsistencies in the state where that's being taken care of today. Does finance weigh in on that? What's the role you play or don't play?
So I just want to make sure I'm addressing your question specifically. So what the disparities would be or the differences would be between which groups then? So
I'm looking on healthcare, retiree healthcare, 80/80 formula that you've created, right?
Right.
And so is that formula being followed by these other agencies? And if not, how can we become aware of that?
Sure. So like I said, the groups that are outside of the administration's sort of collective bargaining purview would be judicial, legislative branch employees, as well as the CSU. In the long-term plan would be to have everyone in the state subject to the same uniform benefit structure in the long term. But because we're doing this through negotiations, we're tackling one bargaining unit at a time as they come up, and having conversations with the judicial branch and legislative staff and CSU about how to pull everyone in ultimately into our retiree healthcare strategy.
Well, I would be interested, and maybe it's not this point in time, but understanding whether, I understand the strategy that the administration's employing here and don't have a disagreement with it, but I'm interested in the outlier issues in some of these various categories, and without that information, we can't even take a look at it. So whether that relates to the executive branch or the legislative branch or CSU, that I'm aware of some significant differences. And I think it'd be healthy to have those things be raised so we can at least be aware of them. Finally, I do note in here that there's no overall cost estimation of what this agreement would amount to in the state. Why is that? And how is this consistent with the budget that the administration's been put forward?
Sure. So I'm not sure what information was provided to you.
I'm looking at the staff analysis.
So this is part of the notification that we're required to provide. We do provide a costing and estimates of what the MOU contract would cost. I'm happy to provide that now. In the bill before you, SB 95 has current year costs for 2015-16 of approximately $31 million. In 2016-17, the budget number is $180 million for the rank and file members in the contract. If all those provisions are extended to managers and supervisors, pay raises, things like that, it would go up to about $220 million. For 16-17, those dollars will be included as part of the May revision. And then over the life of the agreement, if you add up all the incremental costs over the 3-year period, for the rank and file, it comes out to approximately $1 billion in general fund costs.
$1 billion for just this MOU?
Just this MOU.
Right, but you don't have that costed across all the other units that are going to be within this budget process that we're still dealing with?
No, currently we don't. So we don't, it's just as part of a negotiation strategy, we don't sort of tip our hat and say, here's how much money that we're setting, we're willing to negotiate with. We did, and as part of the governor's budget, though, we did, in January, we did set aside $300 million general fund and built in some funds in the out years, really just as a reflection. That's not really much historic precedent for doing that, but what we wanted to really indicate to the legislature is that as we're negotiating these contracts with almost all of our employee groups over the past couple years, is that, and mostly this year, is that these agreements can have significant permanent, ongoing, multi-year costs in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So, and I think this contract with one of our largest bargaining units reflects the scale of that.
I appreciate you sharing that. $1 billion is the cost. That would be nice if we had that laid out here in our material, just to understand, as you just explained.
Yeah, we'll follow up with your staff and make sure that you guys have.
Senator Glazer, you asked completely appropriate questions. The analysis we all have is labeled as draft. We should have to everyone's office by tomorrow, the final, which will have all the numbers that Mr. Stern's referring to.
I would add that our office also produces an analysis when Department of Finance or CalHR submits the agreement to the legislature. Our office has 10 days to complete an analysis. And basically what we do is review the fiscal estimates that Department of Finance provides. And that analysis of the Unit 6 agreement is available on our website.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, the reason is that I ask these questions is that, I mean, we all would like to pay everybody more, and I can't argue with 3% as a fair, unfair. I mean, they've been carefully negotiated. It's just that at the end of the day, we have to reconcile this with a lot of demands that we're facing throughout state government, and there's a lot of needs out there. And again, not speaking specifically to this, what's before us, but it's an ongoing challenge that we have. In isolation, it certainly seems reasonable. But we know that there's a lot of more demands that we're facing, and it should be clearer here as to what these things really mean, not just for this unit, but going out through all of state government.
Without a doubt. And Mr. Stern, since you did make mention of the life of the MOU's cost at approximately $1 billion, that's correct?
Right, correct.
Can you give us some context for that? So you had made mention there are 18 bargaining units total, but the number of individuals in this one is what percentage of the total?
This is about 20%,
So
about a fifth.
that's a little heartening to know that we'll have 20% under our belt as opposed to an 18th costing us $1 billion over 3 years. Yeah. Senator Wolk.
Yes, very briefly, Mr. Chair. I wanted to just ask some questions about this JLBC and the side letters and basically the process, and has nothing to do with this particular agreement or others. But having served on the JLBC with you, obviously, the only time that I remember an issue coming forward had to do with the Stockton facility and changes, dramatic changes in cost, appropriately so. my question is there a process by which, when these side letters are made available, and they are significant, permanent, ongoing costs, is there something in, what is the threshold? Is there a threshold from which, or that side letter automatically comes back to the Budget Committee, or to the Budget Subcommittee, or to a Policy Committee, or not? I don't know, and I really would be interested in the LAO taking a look at that.
Yes.
And
Schroeder?
having served on it, it just kind of surprised me.
So historically, the process was that every agreement came to JLBC, and the threshold was that if there was a single dollar change or increase in cost, it would have to be submitted for approval by the legislature. But I believe it was in the last year's budget was when we changed the process. So now that Department of Finance, through provisional language under item 9800, Department of Finance does the initial review of side letters, and I believe the threshold's $1 million. Sounds right. I think that's right. If it's $1 million or more in cost, then it goes to the legislature.
And you would see,
And would that trigger a hearing of the JLBC, or does that then, at $1 million, the threshold go back to where?
Well, we're notified of every, even the no-cost addenda, we are notified of those, and we do review those to make sure that Department of Finance's assessment is consistent with our understanding. It would really be up to the legislature how it approves those agreements that are above that threshold, whether it goes before JLBC or before budget or whatever committee.
So Senator Wilk, and it's a worthy question for all the members of the Budget Committee and those who are serving on JLBC, that all of these addenda, as Mr. Schroeder points out, above that certain threshold will come to us. And through a staff assessment along with a recommendation coming from the LAO, we have a recommendation. A recommendation is made to the chair of JLBC, which is the Senate budget chair. And there could be an LAO recommendation or a staff recommendation that any particular item is of such significance that it should be brought to the entire committee. It doesn't happen very often, because there are just so many changes that happen on an ongoing basis. I'm signing off on letters probably 5 times a month, if not more.
Especially in the Unit 6 agreement, where there's a section 27.01, which Cal HR referred to earlier, where basically every addenda becomes part of the MOU. So there's a lot of agreements that come in for Unit 6, which is CCPOA.
The threshold now is $1 million.
I'll have to look back at that. That's what my memory is, but I'll have to look back. It's provisional language under item 9800.
and any significant cost would have to go through the budget process, any cost that can't be absorbed by the department. So if there's a major workload, work shift sort of component, we would have to bring it as part of the budget approval process.
The idea is that since the administration negotiates agreements throughout the year, even when the legislature's out of session, to allow them to implement the terms of the agreement in that interim.
I get that. I'm just thinking about Senator Hancock's issues. When you have significant, permanent, ongoing costs, policy that have serious policy implications for the future, that ought to trigger some kind of review. And it didn't, for whatever reason, and ought to have. So.
Could you remind us, you would put a date on when the side letter, which included the standardized staffing, came through?
I believe it was in 2013.
So we'll go back and check to see what the process was and how that was communicated to JLBC as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Wolf. Any other questions? There's no need for a motion. The reason we're not taking a vote today is because the Senate doesn't actually have possession of SB 95. It's still on the Assembly side, so that should be coming over now. We will have had a hearing on SB 95. This is it. And we will have done our due diligence and take up the bill once we get it from the Assembly, likely on Thursday. And before we adjourn, we still have our first item, AB 120 on call. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Brown, you've been more patient than anybody else in the room. I wasn't going to cut you off.
Craig Brown for CCPOA. I'm just going to try to touch on a couple of these.
Yes, go right ahead,
I'm in full
please.
support of this. As I recall, the standardized staffing side letters were negotiated after the department presented a master plan and after that plan was incorporated into the budget. So the side letters were basically an implementation deal. Arguably, you made the decision on spending that money in the budget process. To address Senator Stone's questions about retirement tiers, our members are in their third tier. Our first members were 3% at 50. Then we had some members at 2.7 at 55. Today we're 2.5 at 57. And I'll be happy to talk individually about any of you with any of your other more detailed questions, but we hope you can support this when it gets to your floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. So again, we do have this call to lift, and sergeants, if you could help us determine if there's anyone else who's going to be coming. I'll put it back on call, and if we have to lift it a second time, that's not a problem. But for those who are in the room now, if you could please call the absent members.
Allen? Allen, I. Anderson? Anderson, I. Nguyen? Nguyen, I.
Replace the call until we hear from the sergeants.
Apparently she's coming. That's what she told me. Apparently she told me she's coming.
If we could please lift the call and call the absent members, please.
Mitchell? Aye. Mitchell, I. Pavley? 16-0.
Thank you. I understand Senator Pavley is still chairing a committee, so we will close the roll. The bill passes 16-0. Thank you, and with no other business before us, we are adjourned.